Cairo and we're coming from Studio 3. My name is Dr. Amr MABROUK. Dua Muhammad is at the control, and today is the World of Info. We're here with you for 1 hour, and today in the World of Info we are presenting the world of books. And today we are presenting two very interesting books that I believe they deserve to be read. The first book is A Trip or a Journey Through the Italian Mentality by Bibi Sevrenti, and the other book, or the second book, is It Is the Mashrabiya of My Life and I Am the One by Thomas Georgesian. And this is another interesting book that deserves to be read. So we'll go right away and talk about the book of Thomas Georgesian, which is a sort of like a biography. And Mashrabiya, if you are not familiar with it, is like a sort of special window that is a type of beautiful artifacts made by very experienced Oriental industrials and workers who can really form by hand made beautiful structures. And usually this is the place where it is placed instead of a balcony in wooden small holes of it carved together, allowing the people inside to watch the streets, but at the same time do not allow the people outside to look inside. It allows in light and fresh breeze of air, and at the same time prevents the entrance of dust and the unneeded eyes, or if you may use the word this expression. And yes, this is a very interesting book because it is dealing with a very interesting man. Thomas Georgesian is a writer, a journalist who is one of the international correspondents living in the United States, mainly in Washington, D.C. He comes from an Armenian family. His roots come that his grandfather and father were only one of the very few members of an Armenian family that survived the exodus and the massacre of the Armenian people that happened in World War I in 1915. His wife, his mother, that's the grandmother of Thomas Georgesian, and his aunts and uncles perished during the exodus, and his father arrived when he was just 5 years old to Egypt. He had a basic education and worked as an accountant in different places, and he was able to raise a family. The family was, he married a very distinguished Armenian lady, and they lived in Chobra in an apartment on the 3rd floor of one of the buildings in Chobra, which was a very cosmopolitan part of Cairo in the 30s and the 40s. And in this place, his family got the first 3 daughters, and then he came to the family in 1957, and then followed by his younger brother. So they were 5 children all in all. His life in Egypt is a mixture of happiness and love that he shared with his family to Egypt, the country that welcomed them and gave them the Egyptian nationality and allowed them to have a living, and as his father used to say, to have a ceiling on top of them. And this is, of course, is one of the most important things that the Armenians cherished and loved about Egypt. Egypt, as a welcoming country, allowed them to live and mingle with the place, and he loved that. The family the whole loved that. It was the job of his mother and father to maintain their Armenian heritage. In their home, they always had some memorabilia that reminds them of the motherland, the language that they kept, the Armenian language, and the newspaper, the daily newspaper that was published every day by the name of Hosapir, which is the carrier of the torch, or the carrier of the torch of the truth and enlightenment. And he was very much interested in reading since he was born. The famous game that the families do when they have a newly born, when he's 1 or 2 years old, they will put him on the ground and put of him some artifacts that belongs to different professions. Maybe a sort of a ruler of an engineer or architect, sort of one of the stethoscopes of a doctor and all this stuff. So they will see what the child is going to pick up, and this must be his profession. And he is from the first moment has picked the pen, indicating how much he really was interested in becoming a writer. However, he joined the faculty of pharmacy, and which he's graduated from it, and worked as a pharmacist for some time in one of the famous pharmacies in Ahmad Street. And this pharmacy is called Metro, and it's one of the oldest pharmacies in Cairo that was built in 1910. He had a shift from 3 to 10 p.m. every day, and he enjoyed this job very much, as sort of it's bringing him, of course, the bread and butter, as they used to say. And of course, at the same time, it was a chance for him to see different people, to get a sort of enlightenment with the personalities of the Egyptians. And him, as a writer, later on would use all the characters that he met to write about them and the personalities that they see. However, during his being a student in the faculty of pharmacy, he had the chance to write in the Hosapir journal, and he was welcome because he speaks Armenian, he writes Armenian. So the editor-in-chief of the Hosapir welcomed him to write. He took the chance, being a journalist under training, to go and visit the famous journals and newspapers and get himself introduced to famous people. And he went to Sabah al-Khair, the famous magazine that was founded by Hassan Abdul Quddus and his mother, Rosa Yusuf, and with the help of Ahmad Bahauddin, a very well-known journalist at the time, 30 years before this incident. And when he met Louis Grace, he gave him a sort of a file to write about Gibran Khalil Gibran, which he has written about him, a beautiful file. This was a sort of an introduction of him to the world of journalism. He took this piece as a sort of an ID or a passport that he used to get introduced to important journalists at the time. And Louis Grace gave him another assignment to write about 30 years celebrating Sabah al-Khair. So he had the chance to meet the pillars of Sabah al-Khair. These were Hassan Abdul Quddus, Ahmad Bahauddin, and he got introduced to them, and they have admired in him the great ambitions to become a journalist, and his persistence and perseverance to write and to understand and to meet important characters that even Hassan Abdul Quddus has dedicated to him one of his books, talking about his young days and saying to him, may you have pleasant experiences like I've had, and you will not have the bad ones. And he had the chance to meet Yusuf Idris, which he admired very much. He had the chance to stay and stand and sit with Naguib Mahfouz and to get exposed to his philosophy and his world of people. And at the same time, he had the chance to see a lot of people at that time, of the famous journalists and writers. This has helped him very much to start being attracted to the profession. He worked in Sabah al-Khair and continued working in the Hosapir. And at that time, as a writer in different newspapers and writing a lot of articles, he got introduced to meet, for example, Salah Jahin. Salah Jahin was one of the very most influential people that has really affected his life. He definitely felt how much for him Salah Jahin was an important person in building up his character, that up till now he always starts his day with reading part of the quartets of Salah Jahin. Salah Jahin has a beautiful book of quartets, which are verses of poetry. Each poem is about 4 lines, and of course it is full of hope and wisdom, and nobody would understand that such an important, very optimistic person actually was suffering from acute and chronic depression. For him, Salah Jahin was the master artist, the writer, the poet, the caricature painter. Everything in him attracted his attention and made him feel that he wants to approach this great genius man and to stay with him. Also, he had the chance to become a student to Louise Grace and Ala Diab. Ala Diab was a very cultured journalist who has always written a beautiful part in Sabah al Khair, and this column usually was called Asir al Kutub, in which he presents a book every week of the books that he read and try to write them to explain to the reader some information about the book, encouraging you to read it and to get more intelligent and more interested and to feel with them. Also, his encounter with Tawfiq al-Hakim and his stories that Tawfiq al-Hakim used to tell him about his young days, about his life in Paris, how he used to go to one of the famous Armenian libraries, which was part of the libraries that he bookshops that he used to visit. And Yusuf Francis, who was working in the Egyptian embassy at that time, suggested that he will make a film about the early days of Tawfiq al-Hakim in France, in Paris, and it's called from the famous book of him, Asfur min al-Sharq, or a bird from the east, from the Orient. And in this film in particular, which was starring Noor al-Sharif, Tawfiq al-Hakim appeared in this film as a sort of an extra and as his own character. And this was really very interesting. He also tells us about his life, or his personal life, about his daughter, that he was very blessed to have her on the night of the Christmas, on the 24th of December 1996, the same day like her aunt, his elder sister, was born 30 years earlier or 40 years earlier, and also the same date where one of the most important martyrs of the Armenians who died in the war of the independence of the Armenia in the 90s, and he's a distant cousin of his. His daughter also born on the 24th of December, and how these three girls met. He tells us about his connections with Armenia, how the Egyptian Armenians have the strong bond and link with Armenia as a country, Armenian causes as independence and as flourishing of Armenia, and at the same time their bond that they have made through the years with Egypt, the country that they really lived in and very much enjoyed their stay with. He tells us also about his work as a pharmacist in the pharmacy that he used to work in for some time, and how he visited this pharmacy with his colleague that used to work together in 2021. Also, one of the important quotings that he has shown and has written in his beautiful book is about the memory. And he says that Haruki Murakami, the famous Japanese writer, said, "I believe that the memory is the most important pillar that stands and puts us together, we human beings. It's like a fuel that burns to give us warmth and happiness." And he has written also one of the quotes that he has learned from Naguib Mahfouz. And he says that you should be like history, opening your ears for everybody to say something, and never ever become biased. And this is one of the most important period, or the sentences given by Naguib Mahfouz. And he said that he in his life has known a lot of people, and he cherished always the relations that he had with a lot of people. And this is an important fact, that the idea is knowing people is not just to know people, but to feel them. And this is what Ibrahim Aslan, the famous writer, said. Then he discussed with us that he, after getting married to an American lady who was born actually by chance in Japan, but she's an American lady, pure American, he decided to go to the United States to try his luck. And the United States, he worked there as a foreign correspondent to a lot of newspapers, especially Egyptian newspapers, and is a freelancer. and he was a member of the press club, of the Foreign Press Club in Washington, D.C. Living in Washington, D.C. has given him the exposure to a lot of things and a lot of people. He has seen different people from different sects. He attended conferences and attended press conferences of different American presidents since 1991 and up till now. And his rich experience with the United States has also helped him to become a sort of interpreter of the American politics and policy. Also, he had the chance to see a lot of Egyptians in diaspora, successful Egyptian people who immigrated to the United States, and he befriended a lot of them. He mentioned the important professor of economics, Ibrahim Awais, who has written a beautiful book about A Tale of Two Cultures that Bill Clinton decided to write the introduction because he felt in debt to Ibrahim Awais, who was his professor when he was a student professor of economics. Also, he has given us some information about the great Rushdie Said. For those who don't know of us, Rushdie Said is one of the fathers of the Egyptian geology. He was a professor of geology in the faculty of science in Cairo University, and he was also a very well-known philosopher and thinker. And his love for geology of Egypt and his books that he has written, and at the same time his memoirs that he has written definitely shows us how important was Rushdie Said in our life. And he taught him just not to live his life by length or breadth, but also by depth. The characters that Thomas Georgesian have met in his different times and periods of life definitely shows us how it is important that he has decided to write down all these information in one book. He definitely tells us about people really who are bright characters in Egyptian culture. For example, Yahya Haqqi. In his last years, he had the chance to meet him, stay with him, and get some education from this very wise Egyptian writer. And then he even invited him to his wedding in the Armenian cathedral, and the man was kind enough to attend his wedding and to give him and all the best wishes in this. So he definitely has lived and happily even suggested on Yahya Haqqi, who unfortunately his eyesight has decreased by time, preventing him from writing. Told him, why don't you get someone to dictate on him whatever you want to listen to, you want to write. He said, I cannot dictate because I love letters and I love them as they form, and I love to change them and add or subtract or remove. And this, unfortunately, will be preventing me from dictating something because I like to see what I'm writing in front of my eyes. This gives us about a really important glimpse on the people of the great pioneers in the Egyptian culture and the Egyptian novelists that he had the chance to meet. And this is, of course, one of the important things about Thomas Georgesian and the life he has lived. He has given us also some information about Ahmad Bahauddin, the famous writer who always respected his own principles, and even when he lost his job because of his principles, he didn't care. He went abroad and he lived in Kuwait for some time and returned in the 80s to rewrite and to write his own famous column without anyone forcing him to stop writing or to edit whatever he is writing. This book carries a lot of characters. These books tell us about a lot of information about really important people who lived within us, and definitely a book that deserves to be read by Thomas Georgesian. It is the Mashrabiyat Hayati. It's the Mashrabiyah of my life. and definitely a book that deserves to be read by Thomas Georgesian, an Egyptian, Armenian, American writer who's so proud of being Egyptian. Stay tuned to us in the world of info and the world of books. So you're still listening to the world of info, and we are coming from Studio 3, and today is the world of books. My name is Dr. Amr MABROUK. Dua Muhammad is still at the control, and yes, this is the world of books. The first book that we have just presented was The Mashrabiyya of My Life, uh, of My Life, and I Am the Lover and the Beloved by Thomas Georgesian. A very interesting book, as I have told you, and book really that deserves to be read. The second book is another interesting one. It's by an Italian author. His name is BBC Valentini, and it's called A Journey in the Italian Mentality. And yes, this is an interesting book because the world of books is full of books that tells you how to understand Swiss people, how to understand French people, the first thing about Italy, the first thing about France, things like that. But a book to be published and written by an Italian author about the Italians, this is definitely of an interest because it tells us the story of Italy from his own perspective. It tells us about how the Italian people think, and he tries to soothe things because there's a big difference between the north of Italy, where Milano is the capital of the street chic, and Napoli, which is in the south, with its very characteristic life and very special people. So they are different peoples from the north and from the south, but what unites them is that they are Italians, and more or less the Italians behave in the same way. And this is the point of view of BBC Valenti. And he tried to summarize the first thing as first he says the Italians have an innate love or a basic instinct of to try to attract the attention of the others, even if the others are not around. Of course, this is a big sarcasm, but he tries to take us a trip to Italy. We start from Milano airport and go downwards from Milano, and we go to all the nearby cities, whether these are Florence, Pisa, or the famous Venice, or we reach Rome, and then we go south to Napoli, and also we have to visit Sicily. So going through this, he tells us what's common among all these Italians, and definitely there are a lot of things in common. He tells us about the airport, where things go from the very start as we go through the airport, and we see what we can call the disorganized organization or the organized disorganization. Because when people go around and reach the Milano airport, they would love to take their things and go as early as possible and fast as possible out of the airport. And they will go on the road and try to find their own cars to go. And the love of the Italians to their cars really makes them very special because Italy after World War II has seen a lot of a big economic depression. In the 1955-1956, there the Fiat company decided to build a very cheap and available car, dependable small car, and this is the Fiat 500. And by this, almost all the Italians were able or could afford to buy this car. And this car was the backbone of the Italians at that time. And this made the Italians so much in love with their cars that almost 70 to 80% of Italians do own cars. Of course, it's not just the Fiat 500 or the Fiat 600, the new ones, or the new models, but definitely it has its own well-being to be an Italian and have your own car. The idea of having different types of cars, even if you have a four-wheel drive while you don't have a desert in Italy, but yet it is very interesting to have a car and drive it around. The second thing about Italians is that in the same period, 1955, 1956, some of the industries or the military industries could not afford to produce more military stuff which is unneeded. So one of these companies have changed into production of a small motorbike called Vespa. And suddenly these Vespas have become so much popular with the Italians. So those who could not afford to buy a car started by buying a Vespa. And even those who had cars also, it was very chic to have a Vespa where you can go around in places that cars cannot go, and where you can always put your girlfriend behind you and go around the alleys, and the small streets of Rome. The second important point of having cars is the narrow streets of Roman big cities, where people are always trying to find a place to park their car. And there is an Italian motto saying that I would park my car in the nearest possible parking place near the place where I'm going. So if I'm going to a restaurant, I need to park my car just in front of it. And this is, of course, is completely impossible. So the Italians will go around many times to find a place near where they want to go. And sometimes they would even leave their cars near their home and go by public transport, since the car has been suited well in a nearby place or an ideal place matching with the place of your residence. So this is an important thing. And therefore, some Italians would have a double parking car, or double parking, or going park the car in very strange way of parking them just to be near where they want to go. Another point about pedestrians is sometimes that they cannot find a place to park to go around on the trottoirs or the pavements, simply because there are a lot of things on pavements. You can find Vespas parking, you can find people who are selling, or vendors, public vendors, or you can find even cars parking on the pavement. And this is something which is very unique for Europeans. You can find that, of course, in the Middle East, in our country, but you can hardly find that anywhere in advanced European countries. But this is part of the Italian character. Now, if we leave the street and the pavement, and we go inside the homes of Italians, we'll find very strange things. First of all, the homes of Italians like to live in families. Sometimes the children would go in living with their parents for longer periods of time, even if they don't get married. They don't just leave like in the United States of America at the age of 18 and find themselves another place to live in. No, they would simply live with their family until they get married. Or if they are going to get married, or rent a house, that would be near to their parents' house. And as for the grandmothers and the grandfathers, if they don't have a place to live with their children, they would live nearby. And usually these grandparents are the ones who are supporting the family, who would take care of the young ones, who would even give them good trophies and gifts, or the startup for the first installment of a small car, or the first installment of a Vespa, will be usually coming from the grandparents. The bonding between the families of Italians is very strong, even between cousins, whether these are paternal or maternal. And therefore, almost 3 out of every 5 Italians would say to you, I have found my first job, or my second job, or all my jobs through the help of some relatives. And this makes the family bond very strong. The gathering of the family in the living room and in the dining room is a very important characteristic of the Italian family. The Italian families like to have an hour in the end of the day sitting together, where they are eating the dinners, exchanging food for thought, and talking about the common problems that the children are facing, and trying to sort out solutions to help the family. Another way of bonding. While as for the personal rooms, they are placed out of the domain of the family, but yet the living room is a common neutral ground where the whole family usually meet once every day in the evening to exchange thoughts and happiness and talks. And this makes the Italians very special in this habit. As we go through Italy, we'll definitely think of a lot of things that we go. We'll talk about, for example, Tuscany and the beauty around it. And they say that what you see in the brochures about the trees, the mountains, and these beautiful colors around, you might see a lot of houses, but they are not painted as you think they should be painted, because this goes to the taste of the owners of the house. And again, we'll find that almost 70% of the Italians have own a property. They live in a property they own, even if it were very small. And the love of this ownership goes, as we have said, to their cars, to their Vespas, and to homes if they can afford to have a home of their own. Another important point is, as you go to the different museums of Italy, you will find paintings that are belonging to the Renaissance period, and you will be stunned to see that the facial features of these people who have been drawn by these artists 500 years or 600 years ago are similar to the faces of the Italians that you see in the street. And this makes us a very special uh, observation that the Italians who have been living for hundreds and thousands of years are almost the ones who are there are the grandchildren of these old people. So the genes of the Italians are strong, the bond that they are living in strong, and the matching that you can see is really very interesting. And as you go through Italy, you'll definitely find yourself putting on the TV, and you would say, "Oh, the TV is a very strange device." In Italy, there are a lot of games that are there on the TV. There are a lot of models that we see every day. The advertisements are very strange, and especially the way that the Italians shop. They, of course, would love to shop online, but they feel like into going into shops themselves, examining the product and measuring it once and twice and three times. Even if the salesman or woman are not that friendly, yet they love to go and mix and match in shops. The online thing is not one of their favorites. And if we are talking about Milano, we'll talk about the different houses of fashion that are there in Milano, and how these houses are very special because they are in the innovators, the ones that are producing la mode, and the ones that are showing us a great with great interest the types of fashion that is introduced. He gave a mention to a lot of people, like for example Valentino or Versace. Even Versace, after he died, his sister is taking care of the establishment. All these types of people, and the way that the Italian fashion industry is going and rising very high in Milano, because they are special, they are talented, and they are the ones who just go into uncharted oceans and build up the fashion of today. Another important culture is the culture of the piazza. Piazza is the square of in every city or every village you can find a piazza. In the cities, there are a lot of piazzas and squares where people are lingering around. They are sitting there, they are talking, they are discussing, they are meeting each other in the piazza. So the culture of piazza makes it different. Also, another culture, which is the culture of the window. The people sitting in the window and seeing the streets of their cities is another interesting thing about uh, sort of amusement that the Italians have when they stand in the window and see and have a look on the streets and a look on the neighbors and a look of that. This makes them part of the Italian character itself. The other culture is the culture of standing in queues. In Italy, the queues you'll find them are straight, but sometimes when they are approaching to where there is the tickets or towards the guy is collecting the money, you'll find them gathered towards this, just not to overlap the ones in front of them, but just to have a look if the things are going right in the right direction, or if people are trying to take their place or whatever. So this is a part of also the culture of the queue. The culture of the work in Italy is different than what we think. People have the wrong information that Italians are not great workers, and they really would love to spend more time in enjoyment. And actually, this is not true. The Italians are ones of the most occupied people who spend more hours in work than any other European nation or people. And it is found that the Italians keep themselves involved in work even after the hours of the work. And that's why you can hardly find the Italian people leaving their offices at 5 p.m. They would leave 5:30 or 6 or even later because they are trying to finish things or tying the knot in a certain deal or a subject. And this is also one of the very strange things. So you can always say that this is a very interesting idea about uh, the Italians and how they feel. Napoli as a city has what we call the individual pluralistic effect, because the people are living as individuals, but at the same time they are enjoying their lives together, making them one of the most unique cities of the whole country, if not of the world. And since we're talking about living in cities, usually when the Italian people, a lot of them are living in the cities and living in buildings, these buildings usually have a union of the owners, where they always should sit and have a lot of discussions about the well-being of the building itself and the ideas of spending and taking care of the building. And of course, this has been always a part of their life. And of course, when we say that the social life of them going around the buildings and around the places that they're living will take us to Sardinia, which has its own port and its own sea, and the life on the sea and the beaches, and the immigrants who are living there, and the people who are illegal immigrants who are trying to hide from the authorities and at the same time are taken as underwaged workers. All this you can see as you go around the streets of Sardinia, but you will see the three generations of a grandfather and a father and a child, and mothers, of course, sitting on the beach, all of them having their own rituals on living on the beach. And as we always say, that the Italian people do not like very much to live in Italy, but they never like to leave Italy. As for the Italians, when they become tourists, well, it is definitely well known that the Italians are ideal tourists. They go around, they spend good money, they don't cause any trouble in the places that they live or they visit. They never go drunk and doing a hooligan effect. And even when they go for countries like the United States or in New York, for example, when the Guggenheim was presenting one of its exhibits its temporary exhibits was about Italy and its memorabilia, the people found a lot of queues of Italians visiting New York, going there to visit Guggenheim because it was having an exhibit on Italia. The sort of the fact that they are going around to see Italy for itself, even when they are abroad, this makes the Italians very special. The trains in Italy are very special. You cannot go to a train in Italy without getting involved with the ones sitting next to you. Definitely you'll find yourself talking with them, and the talk between strangers on the train is something different than any country in the world. Every Italian would share part of the experience of his trip. He would talk about Italy and he would talk about his visit and he would talk about whereabouts he's going. This makes them special. So the special or the private moments of Italians, usually they take it in their own bathrooms or in their own bedrooms, where these are their only and fighting, defending castles, if we may use the expression. So definitely the social life of Italians, the idea of living together is definitely another thing. And as for the hotels, there is nothing that is matching an Italian hotel. Because an Italian hotel, all the staff who are working there are always willing to help, always presenting the offering help for the strangers and trying to persuade them to go to whatever good place, even without having any commission or something. But they will always go on explaining vividly the places or the whereabouts, and they always, you can find the comments of the hotels on booking, for example, they say the staff is very cooperative, the staff is very helpful. And this is one of the considerations of the hospitality, of the tourism industry of Italy. And also, if you go to smaller hotels, which are in apartments, they are calling the pensions, which are definitely another special entity that is not found in anywhere in the world except in Italy or in other Mediterranean countries like Egypt, where you can find in this pension the people are always trying to help the customers, and they are always trying to give them a good, jolly good stay in their pensions. We cannot leave this beautiful book without talking about the solidarity of the Italians together as a family, and how they are supporting each other, and how, as I told you, that 3 of every 5 Italians would tell you that I found my job or my first job through relatives. We can find about the inheritance that uh, we have at least uh, half of the engineers are coming from the same family. I mean, an engineer would have a family member also as an engineer in 50% of the engineers. 40% of the doctors have in their in family, close family members, doctors as well. And 25% of the judges, they are coming from or having in their families another judge. This gives you an idea of the family solidarity, the way of these people are living. And of course, we'll talk about the gardens, because every person in Italy would like always to take care of the garden nearby. Even if he has a small garden, he will keep it and take care of it, and will plant in it some vegetables and fruits, and always keep it in a good, safe way. The idea of taking care of these small gardens is part of the Italian entity and character, and this makes the Italian people very special. Well, Bibi Severenti has really given us an idea about the mentality of Italians. A Journey in the Italian Mentality is one of the books that I really suggest that you should read and find your way to read it, because definitely it introduces you to a different type of people. People who are caring, kind, and have a lot of things in common. And that's why Egyptians really love Italians. And whenever you can find a lot of Egyptians living in Italy, they are feeling very much at home. And when the Italian tourists come to Egypt, they enjoy their stay. It's just a strong bond, maybe because we are sharing the same shores of of the Mediterranean, but definitely it is the type of life and the type of family bonding that makes the Italians very near to each other and very near to us in their own habits. Well, this is a very nice book by Pepe Severanti, A Journey in the Italian Mentality. Stay tuned to us. We're still coming from Studio 3. So we're still listening to the world of info. Today is the world of books. My name is Dr. Amr MABROuk. Dua Muhammad is still at the control. And yes, we presented today two sentimental books, if we may use the expression, because these two books have a thing in common in between, which is the nostalgia, the love of people, the love of the space, and love of the place. The two writers have a strong bond with whatever they're writing about. Bibi Severenti was writing about his country, about Italy, and about the Italians, about how he is trying to explain to the listeners and the readers all about Italy. While Thomas Georgesian has a very big bond with Egypt. As an Armenian who lived in Egypt, was born in Egypt, and even served in the Egyptian army during his conscription, definitely has a lot of things to share with his Arabic readers about his country. He also loves Egypt inside out. He loves the details. He loves the the life that he lived in. He loves the bond. He loves the connection. He loves the fact that the country has been hospitable to his family and to the rest of the Armenians in times of trouble. And even though he lived in Egypt for 34 years, but yet he now living in the in United States since 1990, 1991. Still, he's carrying Egypt in his heart. Still, he loves Egypt. Still, he wants to come every now and then. Still, he's involved with its hopes and with its aspirations. And still, he wants always to come to Egypt. Armenia has a place in his heart. He goes to Yerevan, the capital, every now and then. He visits Armenia. He shares his feelings with the Armenians, but still, Egypt is his weak spot. So the two writers have one thing in common, which is the love of their country. The Italian Bibi Severenti has mentioned in the end of the book is that the Italians, they always would say, I don't want to live in Italy, but they never leave Italy. The Egyptians, they love their country. They sometimes are forced to leave it because of certain economic situation or certain familial obligations. But Egypt stays in their hearts. Egypt stays lingering in their memory and their minds, and always they have the feeling and the intention to come back. If not to stay, but at least to visit and see with nostalgia the places that they lived. Bibi Severanti has summarized his kind of love to Egypt, and so did Thomas Georgensian, who summarized his love to Egypt by saying that what Ibrahim Aslan has said, that it's not just the knowing of the people, but the feeling of the people which bonds you with the world. I think living in your homeland will definitely sharpen your memory and make you always remember and use your memory to bring warmth to your life. Two different books, but two loving books, books that really deserve to be read. My name is Dr. Amr MABROUK. Dua Muhammad was in the control, and I promise that we'll come back same time, same station in Radio Cairo, and hopefully you'll be listening to Radio Cairo. Stay tuned to Radio Cairo as we go on with our programs continuously. Thank you.